All right, and welcome everyone to this Lunch and Learn, and especially Juan and Alex, our presenters today with the Latinx Business Development Program. We're so glad you're here and that we can see you. And I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourselves further. I want to let everyone know that we're going to hear from Juan and Alex, and then we'll open it for questions and answers, just a dialogue. And at that point, you can use the raise hand, but along the way here, you can use the Q&A section, the little button down on your screen to enter questions anytime you have them, and we'll make sure to get to them, or you can use the chat. Either way is fine. If you are not a panelist, you can only use the Q&A function. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, Juan and Alex. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you for having us today. It's a pleasure to be here and sharing information with everybody here. Thank you for joining us. And as you mentioned, Juan and I are going to be describing more about the program here at NABC and with the Latinx Business Development Program. And I present myself as Alex Perez, the Director of Latinx Business Development Program. And I'll let Juan introduce himself briefly.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Juan Morales, Programs Coordinator with the Northwest Agriculture Business Center. Pleasure to be here with you all and appreciate the time having us here today.
Okay, can we do next slide, please? One before that, please. Can you go back to slide, please?
Trying, sorry. I'm having further technical difficulty.
Okay. Okay, well, here I'm going to mention a little bit of history and a little bit of more information on how this got started. NABC was with the interest of trying to provide this service in a bilingual format. So this program got developed back in 2017. And that's how this got started. So the Latinx Business Development Program got started with a focus of doing two things, providing business technical assistance, and also with the combination of doing trainings and workshops of value for farmers here in the area and other existing businesses. So that's kind of how it got started back in 2017. This program got started in a way that could be seen a little bit different because I like to say that the work that we're doing under this program is meeting people where they're at. And what I mean by that is depending on where they're at with their business or if there's have any type of barriers or difficulties, either language barriers or computer literacy, or any other understanding of how things work in here locally or in the United States as far as having an operation with a business or farm. We try to provide the tools and the resources to make that happen. So the services that we offer during the TA include, but there's several more, didn't want to include too much. We do business planning strategy, marketing plans. We provide access to funds, either through grants or through actual loans. So what that means is that we're in a position where we try to figure out creative ways to make it less intimidating and more culturally appropriate for folks. So whenever we work with the Latino farmers, like we make sure that they feel comfortable whenever they're going to meet either with someone at a bank or dealing with a grant that they don't understand. So we do a lot of one-on-one work with them. And that's something that many people don't know. The time and energy that it takes to do that thing in order to make it effective and to make it valuable for folks, because we really have to figure out a way to encourage and motivate the farmers, because it could be intimidating for them if it's their first time doing any of these things as far as the paperwork or dealing with certain situations where they're not too comfortable or familiar with. Next slide. So have here an example. We've done a variety of different efforts that would include TA, but one of them that I can mention was a combination with the farmer where we actually did assistance with a grant and also a loan. And it was a combination of two things. So we worked closely with a credit union that had a program specifically to help Latino farmers get a loan, and with another organization that also had the special service where they were tailoring to give grants out to Latino farmers. So I work closely with both organizations to do both. So we uh, did things in a way that it was less intimidating, that it was also respectful. Try to do as much as possible that mindset. So we were able to be successful by getting that farmer a loan with that credit union and also a grant with that organization. So what it took there was doing a lot of one-on-one with the farmer and a lot also one-on-one with the service providers, either the credit union or the other organization, to be in the middle of explain things, what needed to happen so it worked on both ends. So that way it was a good experience for everybody because more than anything, it's a learning experience both for the farmer and for the service provider because we try to do things in a way that it's going to be less intimidating. And for example, there's many organizations that are doing business a certain way and they just have the documents and emails and that's how they do it. How we do this kind of work by supporting the farmers is we actually sit down, me and Juan, with the folks we're working with and guide them through the process, like step by step. And that could be either interpreting verbally when we're in meetings or actually doing translation with the paperwork. On top of that, we also do explaining in depth of what it is that we're doing because even if you speak the language, doesn't mean you're going to understand what's going on if it's something legal or something to do with finances. So that's the niche approach that we have is that we actually take time and energy to really figure out a way to make it an easy process for the farmer where he feels motivated and also supported that if he has any questions, he's not going to be embarrassed to actually ask questions or to figure out a way to move past whatever hurdle they have. Next slide, please.
And with that, we've also had notable projects that we've done in the past. Technical assistance is essentially a major aspect of the work that Alex and I try to do day in and day out. But outside of technical assistance, we have also done notable projects in and around the community and around ag. As we slide over to the next one, we'll discuss the first one. So to begin, we've done bilingual computer courses in the past, and we've continued to do them even up until now presently. As we slide over, we'll talk a little bit more in depth. So like Alex was mentioning, when he came on board, he got many of the projects going and they've essentially just been built upon and just getting beat, for a lack of a better word, with each of the projects that we've done. So with that, it was first established in 2017 when Alex did come on board. The idea behind it was to always have two course levels. You want to be able to encompass and get everybody and anybody, and not have the discomfort of being in a room where maybe you're not feeling that you're learning up to pace. So we've offered two courses with bilingual computer courses, one being in basic computer courses and advanced computer courses, with the goal of always to increase awareness around digital literacy. Since time has gone on, we have seen that the world has been getting more and more digitized. A lot of the work is starting to become done and has been done online through clouds, with the use of Word, use of Excel spreadsheets and everything. So there's always been a great need in sort of having the digital literacy and being up to speed for most of the work that's being done today. With the folks that we serve, the Latinx community, they already face disparities, and then having the additional disparity of having access to digital literacy has been a key focus for us as an organization, to sort of lower those disparities for these groups of individuals. The focus has been on small and starting or aspiring businesses, to help them out so that they have the awareness and how to navigate a computer, whether it's for their personal business that they have going on or even for personal use. We know today of just how complicated and complex everything is with having everything in a digital format, whether you're on social media or working on a Word document or a spreadsheet. I mean, we even have as things as digital hugs. So, I mean, that shows a pretty clear example of how digitized the globe really is. As we slide on over to the next one, we've also done food distribution projects, another notable project that we've done in the past and that we've continued to do up until presently. The goal with this one has always been to increase access to sales and access to healthy and organic food for Latinx families. As we slide on over, we'll explain a little bit more in depth. So with the food distribution project, this started at about October of 2020. And I'll pass it on over to Alex because he'll be able to detail a little bit more in terms of the timeline when the first two projects occurred in 2020.
Sure, Juan, thank you. So the story with that project was that we were approached at the time by another organization, local organization, mentioning that they wanted to support. And during that time was when we were facing the challenges of COVID. So me, by talking to several of the farmers, I learned that many of them were struggling because at the time, all the farmers markets were closed. And many of them rely heavily on the sales with the farmers markets. So I tried to figure out a way to make this valuable for everybody. So we proposed the idea of figuring out a way that we can purchase from farmers, local Latino farmers, and see how we could also support the local need. Because at the time, I also learned that many of the food banks were getting more and more people. So the need was just growing, people needing access to food. So I proposed the project with another organization, with this Catholic Community Services Farm Worker Center. And they already had an established relationship and trust built with a lot of these families that they already work with other services. So I proposed the idea of working with them in a collaborative way to help us see a way to provide this service to them, the families in need. And that's how that project got started. So there was opportunity for funding and opportunity to support the local farmers and buying from them, and working with another organization that already had trust and relationship with families in need. And it was a great start, and that's how it got started. And next thing you know, there was interest and support from other organizations to continue doing the work. I'll get back to you, Juan.
Yeah, thank you. So when I came into the picture over to NABC about the summer, June 2021, one of the first projects that I was able to participate on was this one, the food distribution project. So we were able to plan for that third distribution event in September of 2021. Subsequently, we did a fourth event in November of 2021. And we sort of did like the idea behind those, ballpark timeline of having one in September and one in November. In September, it was the rationale behind that it was sort of towards the tail end of the season for many of the farmers, their produce yields. And it was also a time for when families can expect to have high costs as kids are heading back to school supplies, new purchases, and that's essentially just kind of strapping in for the following season as we head into the fall and winter. So with this project in mind, we had the idea of getting two birds with the same stone, helping out farmers with access to sales as they were at the tail end of the season, and also helping out migrant farm working families as giving them access to healthy and organic food, and really give them that access at no cost, because these boxes were delivered to them completely free of no charge. And the rationale behind the November date was, again, we expected that, you know, farmers are still at the tail end of the season. And with November coming around, the holidays, we wanted to provide access to healthy foods at the time for their Thanksgiving dinners, or in and around that time period. So again, it was with the mindset of getting the two birds with the exact same stone, and we've kept that going in and out. So we did a September of 2021, November of 2021, and then again September of 2022, November of 2022, and then most recently we concluded our last one in September of 2023. It has been a program that has proven to be successful. You may ask why. Well, because we've seen the satisfaction from farmers. They've been provided access to sales as they're at the end of their season. And you've also served the community and migrant families who already face a large amount of disparities. And so, not saying that you completely eliminate a disparity, but if we're able to at least lessen or minimize to some degree that barrier, you know you've done the right step in the right direction. As we slide on over, we'll go a little bit more in detail. So the projects, they've always sort of been about the ballpark within about $10,000 to purchase these healthy and culturally appropriate clean food. Cumulatively, across all the 7 projects that we've done, we've estimated that it's been about north of $70,000 across all 7 projects of funds that have been dedicated towards buying these, you know, healthy, culturally appropriate foods from farmers straight from the farm, essentially straight to the families. With the first project that we did, we were able to capture some metrics early on. First project, we were able to serve 50 families, 70 at the next one, 150, 65 families in that fourth one, 70 for the 5th project. And for the 6th and the most recent project, we've been able to serve 75 families in each. And if my math serves me right, I think that it comes out to be about 520 families over the 7 projects that have happened. We also want to recognize that these projects wouldn't have been possible without, 1, the families, 2, the farmers themselves, and then 3, also our partners that we've had throughout the years at each of the projects, that being Catholic Community Services Farm Workers Center, who have been with us since the very beginning, North Sound ACH, Bellingham Food Bank, and Food Lifeline, to name a few. With that, I'll pass it on to Alex for another notable project that we've done.
Yes, so another project that we've done, and this is part of the trainings and workshops, is by doing this kind of work for several years here locally, I've noticed the need and the interest with some of the farmers and the community in general of wanting to learn more about finances. The only thing is that I noticed that many times it's extremely intimidating. And it's also something that is not normally talked about too much in the Latino community, the Latinx community. So I did come across a really good organization that was tailoring their services and their approach in a way that it was simplified and also tailored to minorities or people of color. So we were able to, again, collaborate with that credit union. And again, we had the amazing support from Catholic Community Services Farm Worker Center, where we provided this workshop. And this is a very great example of doing things in a way that makes sense to who we're trying to help. So here we took it up a notch a little bit. And since we were working with Catholic Community Services, and many of the families that they work with not only speak Spanish, but also speak Mixteco, we went ahead and also provided Mixteco interpreting. So families that were there attending got to hear the presentation completely in Spanish by the credit union presenters, which did an amazing job. And we were also able to provide Mixteco interpreting for the folks that also were there as participants. To me, this is very critical and very important to share with others, because many times we want to put everybody in an umbrella, like you're Latino, you're Hispanic, you're Latinx, and sometimes don't know or are aware that there's also folks that not only speak just Spanish, but also speak another dialect, which is either Mixteco or Triqui. And that's something that was very great to do. And that was also something that we saw that was a huge need for. So we definitely did our best to try to make the best experience for everyone with that workshop. Next slide, please. So speaking more of financial literacy, as I mentioned before, the need for this kind of information is very big. And the approach is also needed to be different, because what I found out by working with many either banks or other organizations trying to help folks is that many times they either don't have the staff that speaks Spanish, or they simply don't have people that have cultural awareness of like how to talk about finances and how to navigate those hard conversations sometimes with folks. And that's something that I took as a challenge to try to figure out a way myself whenever I'm supporting the farmers and other businesses with this kind of work, because talking about money is intimidating. And it's also very important to be knowledgeable about what's going on with their finances as individuals, as families, and as business owners, or the folks are, thinking of having a business. Because sadly, we see many times that either farmers or other business folks are so excited about starting that operation of that business that they tend to put themselves in situations that are very hard to come out of. And what I mean by that is that by not knowing certain things that they need to do to be financially fit or financially aware or ready to do certain things in the business world, sometimes they get themselves in situations where it's really hard to get out of debt, or they're left with other problems that have to do with other organizations, which is the IRS or Department of Commerce, by just not knowing basic terminology or basic things or reporting on things that they have to do in order to comply with all the state and local institutions. So I think that it's a effort that we need more of, either NABC or other organizations, to continue that path of sharing more information on financial literacy, because I think it benefits everybody, the local community, the farming community, and folks that are interested in starting a business. So here we have another great project. So it's been several years that we collaborate with Bellingham Food Bank. And like it says here, like-minded organizations working together. So here we have an example of the food bank needing food to provide to folks, in need of food as well. And here we have the opportunity to collaborate with them in a way that it benefits everybody. So what happens there is that we join forces to make this project success. And how does that work? Well, I directly work with the farmers individually and with staff at Bellingham Food Bank every year. And we sit down and we talk about what's going to be available and what's going to be a possibility for that year. And what happens there is that we do produce sales agreements and contracts. And what happens there is that the farmers get to have an idea what they're going to be able to sell for the season at the beginning of the year. They get, we sit down and we do an agreement and a contract. And Bellingham Food Bank is putting extra time and energy on doing these kind of things to really support the Latino farmers. And what I mean by that is that it's easier for, a food bank just to order food from other farmers or other bigger institutions. But here they want to be very intentional and support the Latino community and other farmers of color as well. And what we provided with NABC is we provide the facilitation of these meetings, interpreting and translation that's needed to make this happen. And the farmers have also responded very well with this because not only do they have an idea what they're going to be able to sell for the season, they're also getting paid a fair price. So there's no negotiation going there to try to get, the lowest price possible from the farmer. So we're doing everything as equitable as possible. So the farmers also feel valued and respected. And this is something that has grown throughout the years whenever there's funding available. And this is something that has been another success because farmers are also getting that practice of what it is to talking to other cells and other people that could potentially be buyers from them. The idea of these small projects is for the farmers to get more and more experience and comfort doing their own operation individually as a farm owner, and also encouraging other organizations and potentially, folks that are able to purchase this from the local farmers to understand that it might take a little bit extra time or extra energy or creative ways to doing, these transactions with the farmers. But overall, everybody's winning because, folks at the food bank are now getting organic, quality, culturally appropriate produce. So many of the folks that go to the food bank, sometimes had never seen or heard of some of the, the produce that, these farmers are providing. And also some of the folks that are benefiting from the food bank are folks that normally they had only seen some of this food back at home, back in Mexico. And now they're able to get this kind of, extremely delicious food that is grown by other local Latino farmers in the area. The idea with this project and the one previous to that, the food distribution project, is really to inspire and to motivate other organizations and other people that are able to be part of this movement, is to combine forces and collaborate together to really support the local farmers, and especially the Latino farmers, because they have existing barriers and ongoing barriers. And if we can figure out a way to support them and provide quality, good produce here locally, I think everybody wins, because as we all know, being a farmer is extremely hard. And it's not getting any easier because of technology, because of bigger corporations and bigger companies, bigger farms. It's not easy. So if we figure out creative ways to work together to support the local farmers, I think we all win. So it does take a creative approach doing this work. So I'm very thankful that Juan came on board because there's no way that I'm able to even attempt to do half of what the work that we're doing now. And the combination of doing projects and trainings and workshops along with the technical assistance is the only way to really carry this work out, because we can't just do workshops and trainings and support the farmers, in that way. We have to do the one-on-one and a combination of providing opportunities for them to learn and to get inspired to take on the next challenge. Either it's a computer course or learning more about marketing, learning more about business planning, feeling confident about asking for a loan or applying for a grant. And that's pretty much the work that we're trying to do and continue to do. But more than anything, at least for me, my goal is to try to inspire more people to do this kind of work, because the demand is growing and we need a lot more bilingual people to be interested in doing this work. Because if we really want to, keep having delicious organic food, that's available here locally, not coming from far away. We really need to work together as a community to help them out.
That's wonderful. Juan, did you want to add anything else at this?
The only thing to really add would be that, yeah, the goal in mind is to really illustrate clear examples that work and that we know that can work, and also illustrate them for the purpose for them to be done with other organizations if they want to do them themselves or if they want to team up. We want to carry that inspiration to make more of these collaborative efforts to happen. I mean, I think everybody here in this virtual room knows and recognizes that the economy doesn't work for working families. It doesn't work for farmers. It's always worked for the top 1%. And rather than simply complaining about it, we can do efforts to try to minimize those disparities and those barriers. Like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, it's not about that we're going to eliminate a barrier completely or abolish certain disparities, but if we are able to minimize a level of pain, even just a little bit, we know that we are inching towards the right direction. And so these projects illustrate exactly just that, whether it's providing access to educational opportunities such as the digital literacy classes, access to healthy foods, and access to sales for farmers. We are accomplishing that in an economy that doesn't work for the vast majority of individuals across this country. And so with that, I'll leave it open to questions. Thank you for having us today.
Oh, well, thank you. It's so fun and inspiring to hear more about your program, and shared really great information. If anybody here has questions and wants to dive in now a little deeper, let's do it. You have multiple ways you can ask questions. If you have been promoted to panelist, that's just a push of a button on that invitation. Then you can use the chat function or the raise hand, and you can be heard if you speak up. If you are an attendee, you can use the Q&A function. That's a different button at the bottom of your screen. So I see that there's a question from Johnny Fishmonger asking about Latinx involvement in ownership in shellfish industry and seafood fishing and processing. Either of you want to speak to that?
Sorry, what is the question again?
Asking about Latinx involvement in ownership in shellfish industry or seafood fishing and processing.
Okay. So we did actually have a little bit of a opportunity to work with a local group of individuals here locally, and we did provide a little bit of help with that a couple years ago. But so far we haven't had any other opportunity to support that kind of business yet.
All right. And Johnny says he can't access panelist level. Can Emily or Abba, are you able to just send that again? Thank you so much. And for others too. And then we have a question, I think Abba was asking here, if there are, in addition to translation, are there strategies that you found effective for making sure that events are accessible and relevant for participants? Things like time of day, offering childcare, keeping the events in person, length of presentation, anything like that you've found helps increase access and participation.
Yeah, I'll share my intake on that, and I'll also let Juan share if he wants to add anything as well. From my experience, I think it depends on the topic and also the objective of what you're trying to do. And what I mean by that is if you want to do either a training or a workshop where all you want to do is provide information, then it's one approach. And if you want to provide a training or a workshop where you want to actually get information from the participants and engage with them, it's a different approach. And what I mean by that is that if it's a really hard topic or complex topic, we strive to do as much as possible to do it completely in Spanish whenever possible, or provide an interpretation if it's the only option that we got to do. So yeah, and as far as the time and the date, we have also found that the great majority of times we're more successful. We provide the event in the evening or possibly in the weekend. And of course, trying to make it as easy as possible for them. And if it's in a location that they feel comfortable already or know about or has easy access, trying to figure out a way to not make it so complicated for them. And whenever possible, it is a huge plus providing childcare when it's possible. And other things we've done as strategies is maybe not having childcare, but having like a section for kids, like doing kids activities. So we've done a lot of that as well, where we kind of provided kind of like farm activities, drawing activities, stuff like that. And that has been helpful. So we didn't want to make the families feel bad that, they had to leave their kiddos. So being understanding as well that if, they have to bring their kiddos, that they're welcome. And of course, it helps having food. Yeah, as a culture, we love food. It's part of our building community. So if you have food in your event, that's a huge plus.
Fantastic.
Anything you want to add, Juan? Oh.
Yes, I'd emphasize it's dependent on factors such as the trust that you have with the community, also what community you're talking about. A community in Burlington will look very much different than a community in Linwood, Washington. So you have to consider those factors. Of course, providing it in a language accessible way, whether it's a language or a dialect such as Mixteco. And also factors such as a community venue where this community will feel comfortable in. For example, regardless of what community you're talking about, you probably wouldn't do it at a DOL meeting room conference. I don't think anybody likes the DOL, but just to emphasize as an example. So it's dependent on certain factors, the community you're talking about, the safe space they feel, language access, all those things are very crucial to consider when planning events.
I saw in the Q&A someone asked if the Latinx Business Development Program services were available anywhere else in Washington other than Northwest Washington.
Yeah, so that's a great question. The way I explain it to folks, I don't like to say neither yes or no, because you have to define how you're able to help, right? And for me, sometimes help, it could be just connecting them to a resource or a person. It could be inviting them to a workshop or a training that's going to be, provided there locally. And the difference is that if it makes sense for them to maybe work with several people, that's when I can see opportunity to work. So I've done that before, where I collaborate with other organizations and we're able to work remotely, where I focus on a specific thing to help that farmer or that person that needed something. But mainly the concentration of the work that we do is here in Skagit, Whatcom area, occasionally the islands as well. Because it's also a factor that with the folks that we're working with, many of them are so busy working that, having to do a long trip, either over an hour, 2 hours to come and sit with us and talk about things. And especially when it's something one-on-one approach, it could be a little bit hard for them, right? So depending on the scenario and depending on the need, we're able to figure out creative ways sometimes to expand, but mainly work in Skagit, Whatcom area.
I will add that we do have Spanish speaking staff in Southwest. Maxime speaks Spanish, so we were able to at least provide some technical support in Spanish in Southwest. So like Tacoma, Olympia, and South area. It's not the Latinx business development program, but it's some of that same offerings.
Naba, did you want to say something about the Q&A feature? You all right?
I had a quick question. So I have a question about your collaboration with the Catholic Community Services Farm Worker Program. I'm wondering, I guess how that came about, and also, so I'm Farm Worker Program. I'm assuming that is separate from the Latinx farms, owned farms you're working at. These are like agricultural workers, I assume, and if so, I guess if there's any, I guess I just want to know how that came about and like what that collaboration looks like, because I guess I didn't realize that you guys did partner with them, and that seems like such a wonderful organization and opportunity to serve that community.
Yeah, so part of the work that we do here is also to try to be aware of what's going on and what other organizations are doing. I try to share with other organizations that, you know, as service providers, that it's okay for us to not be able to do everything. And if we're able to know about other opportunities or other folks that are able to do other things, so they're, you know, specialized in doing something, why not work with them? So the idea to bring up that collaboration opportunity with them was because I thought that it would be very beneficial for everybody to collaborate with them, because they already had the relationship and the trust built with folks that needed the help the most. And what I mean by that is that many of the folks are in very vulnerable situations, and they already have a place where they feel safe, and they already have a trust and a relationship with the amazing people that work there. So this was not an approach that was going to be just for the public, just for anybody to go there and be part of this project. It was all specifically done in a way that it was going to be valuable and for the folks that needed it. So the farmers needed the help, specific, tailored to them. And then there's a lot of families in need that this organization already had contact with and had worked with other services, you know, to help them out. And that's how we do it. I mean, NABC came in with, you know, the relationships that we have with the farmers and being able to coordinate this along with the organization. And they like the idea. So we try to do this as simple as possible. We didn't try to complicate anything. We weren't experts on doing these things. It was something that came out of, you know, opportunities that came with COVID. And we simply tried to figure out a way that worked for everybody, where it was an NABC project. It was more of a project involving many community members. And like Juan said, farmers and another great organization that has a same mindset as providing support for folks in need.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Johnny, did you want to ask your question in person, or you want me to just go ahead?
Yeah, in person, please, because there's some contact.
Mm-hmm.
Hola, Juan and Alex. This is pretty awesome. So, I've been working in the oyster, mussel, and clam industry in Washington State for 45 years. And then the last, 15 years up in Alaska. So, amongst oyster farms in the shellfish industry, 99% of ownership is white European colonials, and 99% of the workforce is Latinx, and ownership of shellfish businesses has been slowly but surely, you know, very similar to orchards and farmland. There's now 5 families in Washington State, I think, maybe 6, that own oyster farms now that are Latinx families. And most of these families came from Mexico, you know, and there's been a 50 to 60 year involvement in the workforce, but ownership has been incredibly elusive. And in the Western states, California, Oregon, Washington, there's about 0 opportunity for new oyster or shellfish leases, any possibility to get a new farm. And so the only possibility is to buy farms from families that have owned them for 30, 40, 50 years, and the workers have gradually been able to finance and buy existing 1%, you know, family farms, oyster and shellfish farms. So that's incredible. But the only I do a lot of work outside of Cascadian Seafarer Cooperative, which I'll talk about in just a sec. But in Alaska, we have incredibly large area and opportunity to grow and to grow oyster and shellfish, but mainly oyster farms. And we're looking for partnership with Western Washington Latinx families that are interested in partnering and owning oyster farms in Alaska and operating them. So it's a long-term project. There hasn't really been any takers, but Alaska is really, really hurting for a skilled workforce that has the aptitude and capacity to work in the shellfish industry. And so working to build relationships and workforce development from West Coast Latinx families to come to Alaska and participate in ownership and stuff is a goal that we're working on, because there's a huge opportunities there. There's an incredible demand for oysters nationwide, North America, and there's almost no place to open up new oyster farms, and Alaska is the spot. But it's a much different culture, much different weather, even than the wet, crappy Puget Sound and Washington Coast. But there's a lot of obstacles. But with the Cascadian Seafarer Cooperative that I'm developing with Warren Neff and with Northwest Cooperative Development Center, where our consultant we're working from is Luis Sierra. He's been incredible. And we're putting together, I'm going to try to talk as fast as possible here. We're putting together a cooperative that will have ownership. We're mostly going to be fishing on small, underutilized fisheries off the Washington coast. So anchovies, sardines, mackerel, fish that aren't as readily accepted in the marketplace in Western Washington amongst you know, a lot of different markets and cultural groups. But we are going to start canning our product, and the best canners in the world putting fish in tin cans are in northern Spain, and mainly in the Basque region. And we don't have the skill set and the quality control to do European level canned fish in Western Washington or anywhere really on the West Coast. And we want to get some of they have guilds that are kind of unions and kind of cooperatives in northern Spain, where there's the fishers and the fish boat owners, then there's the processors and the fish workers in the plants, and then there's also a culinary and gustatory guild which celebrates the food. These go back 1,000 years, and there's the 3 components. We want to do a cultural exchange on hopefully HB2 visas to bring some of the, and it's mostly aunties and grandmas, very similar to the same aspect of the workforce in Western Washington, works in a lot of the fish plants that have the real skills to help us get up to speed and quality control and finesse that we can put out a European EU quality canned product. So we want to do a culture exchange. We want to bring we want to go over and visit and develop relationships. Then we want to see if we can bring those folks to Western Washington to come over and help us develop a workforce that can do this real high quality work. And we've got
Hey,
very
Johnny,
interesting markets in the
there's
end product. So what we're
Johnny.
looking for, just real quick, I'll wrap this up. What we're
Okay.
looking for is we're going to need translation services and help and assistance to make this thing all happen. So I've just thrown it out there. That's we're looking to do this in about 2 years from now.
That is a lot of great projects. Many. Did you want to comment on that, Alex, or do you now know that each other exist and you can connect?
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. It definitely sounds like an adventurous journey. There's
Yeah.
a lot unfolding there. But thank you for trying to make it a creative because it does involve a lot of moving parts. But yeah, definitely you can connect with us and we can continue the conversation off this meeting. So feel free to reach out.
Yeah, and so glad that you're here to share that information. That's wonderful. We only have another minute here together, so I just want to wrap it up by letting you all know that our next Lunch and Learn will be again on the second Thursday of the month. We're trying to stick with that timeline, so it will be June 13th. And our very own Abba Kaiser is going to be talking about a report that will be coming out on Monday on the www.fsp.org website. And I can put that in the chat. That's our website where you can go to see this report and also come on June 13th to hear about it. It is from an open steering committee meeting that happened February 8th. That really dived into mapping infrastructure needs in meat, grains, and food hubs in particular in Western Washington. And it was a really wonderful meeting and very productive. And all of the output has been summarized in this report, which again will be online. And WWFSB, I'm going to put it in here. And I hope that you'll come here more and ask questions on June 13th. And also on www.fsp.org website is our Lunch and Learn archive. And on that archive, you can find a recording from today, all the Q&A, Q&A sheets that come out after these webinars. And they have resources and then there's also the presentation slides and recording. So go there for more info. And I cannot get this thing to send to everybody. I'm going to try again here. There. Hopefully you can see that, but just go to www.fsp.org. And thank you for being here and for dealing with all of our techno challenges. Juan and Alex, wonderful presentation, and we're so grateful for you. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
Is there any way to get Juan and Alex's contact info?
Yes, I can just tell you that it's here. I'll put it in the chat. There are emails in the chat right here. It's the same, Juan at agbizcenter.org and Alex agbizcenter.org. There you go.
1 second. I'm copying it.
Yeah, and they'll also be on the Q&A sheet, which will go online by
Okay.
tomorrow
Yeah,
or Monday.
and thank you. We've been talking to folks in Spain for several years now about doing this. Because it's just we don't know if we could ever be able to train the workforce to be able to do the work that we want to do to develop the cans in the canning line. And we're also talking to a small canning um operation that wants to sell their whole operation. So
That's
slowly but
interesting,
surely.
Johnny, because up here I'm in Bellingham. Where are you?
I guess today I'm in Ballard, but mostly I'm going to be based out of Ilwaco, Astoria, but probably Ilwaco just to say it's Pacific County, Washington State.
Well, here in Whatcom County, we had a big cannery.
Oh yeah, the
And
Bornsteins.
yeah, and it was mostly Latinx workers, and they all got laid off. And I think that they're still around, I'm sure they didn't disappear. And they had years, there were people who were career people there, you know? So I
Yeah,
wonder
we
if
have the same thing happen in Alaska too. Over half of the seafood plants in Alaska closed over the winter. So there's been a massive, massive workforce shock. And we're going to be so small, but and I don't know if folks would want to relocate to Pacific County, but there's some real opportunities.
Well, talking
There-
about relocating from somewhere in Washington or somewhere in Spain, I think the people in Washington might be more like just more familiar and more likely to make that move. I would really look to those.
There's
those
there's a large Latinx community in Pacific too. It's actually pretty new. There was a wave of, and it's the oyster processing plants here. They're, I think, are why most
Yeah.
of the
Yeah,
community
that's
moved
what I've
here.
worked. That's where I've worked with Latinx families for like 40 years in Willapa Bay area, and every fish plant on the whole West Coast is dominated, and with Latinx folks working, but in oyster industry, extremely. Um, yeah, it's not getting people to move here uh from Spain to get established and live, but we'd like to have them come and train um, a workforce so that a local workforce could be take over and involved in ownership of of value added processing of the fisheries we're going to be involved in, and so um, the opportunities um, and the workforce that's already there is mostly already Latinx people that have the skills and capacity and aptitude that have been working in the seafood industry and understand how nasty and gnarly it is,